Hi friends, Joe here. This is episode number 195 of the Dekahedron RPG podcast. Getting so close to episode 200, I'm stoked. I talked to James, he will be on for episode 200. Don't know what we're going to talk about yet. Anyway, this episode is a quick break from the How I Build a Sandbox campaign series that I'm doing to talk about the new edition of Tunnels and Trolls, because it was just brought to my attention and I want to strike while the iron is hot, so to speak. So, just to give some backstory, Tunnels and Trolls is like the third or fourth ever published RPG, depending on how you want to count things. If you want to limit it to commercially published, you can say that it's the second or third, again, depending on how you want to count things. And if D&D was the first simulationist game, Tunnels and Trolls was like the first rules light gamist game. It didn't worry so much about the exact, speed factor of ratings or stuff and everything that D&D goes into. It was a game. It was meant to have fun, and it strips away a lot of that stuff and you can just run with it. I am a big fan of it. Jason over the Nerds, well, formerly of the Nerds RPG variety show. Sadly, the show has come to an end. We'll miss you, Jason. But he's also a big fan, and ever since the IP was sold to, well, it was owned by Flying Buffalo, and Rick Loomis, the founder, sadly died. He was a great guy. And the family sold the IP to one company, and they ended up selling it to Rebellion Unlimited. And the other day, Riley of the Diegetic Advancement podcast posted on Discord that we all share for the Anchorite APA and say, hey, has anyone checked this out yet? How does it compare to the original? And he had a link to drive-through for this new edition of Tunnels and Trolls, which is called Tunnels and Trolls: A New Era. And I was like, oh, wow, no, I haven't seen this yet. Let me give this a try. So Jason has been worried ever since the sale happened. He said, they're going to take this game and they're going to utterly ruin it. And I said on his show, I think it was my show actually, when we were doing the Christmas movie reviews, I said, I'm hopeful, because it doesn't make sense for a company to spend that much money, I don't care how much it is, for the IP for something and then completely change it. Because if you're going to do that, you didn't need the IP, because it's not like Tunnels and Trolls has one of those great names that's going to pull in all these people that say, oh yeah, Tunnels and Trolls, it's a great, it's kind of being the third or fourth oldest RPG. It's kind of falling out of the gamer zeitgeist. And the new generation of gamers, they've never heard of it. So the name doesn't buy you anything. So the only thing the name is going to attract is people who are fans of the original. And if you change it too much from the original, they're not going to like it. So I said, it's not going to be that bad. So anyway, Riley posted the link. I downloaded it. I read it. And in the introduction, Rebellion says, this is our attempt to making homage to the original Tunnels and Trolls while making something new and unique. Words to that effect. You will have to let us know how we did. Well, Rebellion, I'm glad you asked, because I'm going to tell you. You took a big swing. You really did. And you missed. You really, really missed. Yeah. There's so many things I want to say about this, and I don't know where to start. I'm kind of scatterbrained, and I don't want this to go on forever. So let me just talk about, I guess, what makes Tunnels and Trolls Tunnels and Trolls. And as I talk about each one of these items, I'll talk about how this misses the boat. I think that's a good way to do it. So the first thing that makes Tunnels and Trolls in my mind is that it is really a stripped down D&D made more fun instead of made more complicated. For example, the original Tunnels and Trolls has 6 attributes: strength, intelligence, dexterity, luck, constitution, charisma. Do they sound familiar? They're exactly the original of D&D, except that wisdom has been replaced with luck. And the reason for that, there's many. Back in 1974, actually, I started in like 77, we didn't know what to do with luck. With what to do with intelligence and wisdom. They were like 2 mental stats that mean virtually the same. When do you use that one and when do you use that one? It made no sense. In fact, Gary spends a good paragraph or two trying to explain the difference and in the first edition Dungeon Master Guide, and I think he fails. um, and later on, like third edition onwards, they just used it to mean willpower and observation when that's not wisdom at all. So they solved the problem by changing the definition of the word. Anyway, so yeah, you didn't need 2 mental stats. And Ken famously said, adventurers don't need to be wise, they need to be lucky. And that makes so much sense. So in TNT, wisdom was like your overall saving throw. Anytime you came into a situation, where in D&D you would save versus poison or whatever, you'd save versus luck. Did you get lucky enough to survive whatever it was that was going to kill you? So in a new era, they got rid of luck as a stat. Just not there anymore, and they replaced it with, well, originally they called it willpower. Now they're calling it wit. But all it is D&D's wisdom. So we've gone back to a change that was purposely left out of the game, and we shoved it back in just to make it worse. I don't know what they were thinking. So I said that luck isn't a stat. I mean, luck in TNT, in original TNT, real TNT, is a stat. And not only for saving throw is it great, but I love it for things like, the characters go into a warehouse and I say, on the other side of the warehouse, there's a group of orcs and they're throwing flasks at you, whatever. So one of the players might say, is there a crate nearby that I can dodge behind? You said it's a warehouse, right? Are you one of those GMs that draws out every single crate on your map? And I'm not. If that's you, more power to you. That's not me. I would say that's a very simulationist thing. That's not me. Anyway, so I don't know, make a luck roll. Let's find out. And if they make the luck roll, yeah, there's one right there. You dodge behind it, no problem. Stuff like that. It's a great stat. So much for that, I try to add it into other games where it didn't exist before. I think every game should have a luck stat. They took it out. If you just flip through the pages of the preview, though, you'll say, oh, yeah, there's luck right there. No, what they've done is they've taken fate points or fudge points, let's be honest, and they've just renamed it luck. So it's not a stat. It is a pool of metacurrency. TNT has never had metacurrency. Metacurrency is the tool of a very narrativist game. And TNT has always been a very gamist game. And you can tell right there how the rest of this show is going to go. They have completely changed the game from being game forward to being narrative forward. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just not TNT. And I'm going to give you an example in just a minute. If you know your history of D&D, you know that around 1998, 1999, 7, somewhere around there. Let's call it 98, just to be whatever. That TSR finally went belly up, and they had to sell out. And it was Wizards of the Coast that bought them. And then they shut everything down, and they designed 3E. And 3E came out, and you could see that it was still D&D, but it was different. All right. Imagine if, instead of being Wizards of the Coast, it was Steve Jackson Games. And they bought all the IP, and instead of doing anything, all they did was take GURPS and slap the words Dungeons & Dragons on it and say, here's a new edition of Dungeons & Dragons. GURPS is a great game. GURPS was my sole game for like 10 years, from the 80s to the 90s. But it's not D&D. And even though it's a great game, it would be a terrible, terrible D&D. And think back to Dungeons & Dragons 4E, right? Everyone said, it's not really a bad game, it's just not D&D. I think that's what we're dealing with here. This might not necessarily be a bad game, it's just not Tunnels and Trolls. So why are you sticking that name on it? If you want to make a new game, just make a new game and call it something new and exciting. I don't get it. And this isn't the first time that this was tried. Back, for the 30th, for the 30 year anniversary, so I guess that would have been about 10 years ago, 20 years ago, Fiery Dragon came out with the 30th anniversary edition of Tunnels and Trolls, or the 7th edition, as we call it. And they wanted to redo a whole new version. And Ken saw it and said, no way, Jose. And he hastily wrote what we now call 7E. And that became the official version. But in the box, they put what they had done, and they called it the alternate rules. And again, it's a great game. It's just not Tunnels and Trolls. And you know, as you heard, I'm passionate about TNT, right? I know people that play TNT. I don't know a single person that plays using those alternate rules, because it's just not Tunnels and Trolls. This thing by Rebellion is just not Tunnels and Trolls. All right, so attributes, talked about it. Luck, talked about it. In the original game, Constitution were your hit points. You know what? They still are. So that's cool. That's good. Good job on that one, Rebellion. Again, I'm going through things that I think are the core of Tunnels and Trolls and applying them to the new game. So Kana's HP, they kept that. Oh, stats themselves. So in the original game, well, in real Tunnels and Trolls, stats go from 3 to 18. You know, 3d6, sound familiar? And that's great, because that means you can pick up like a D&D module or D&D NPC, and the stats just convert right over. The only thing you might have to do is translate wisdom and intelligence to figure out which one you're going to use for IQ in Tunnels and Trolls. Not in this version. They go from 2 to 4. And they never tell you what that means. Is a 2 like human average, or is it 2 human below average? Looking at the task resolution, how the numbers work, I think 2 is average, so 3 would be good and 4 would be very good type thing. But they don't tell you, and that drives me a little bit crazy. So that means even as whatever game it's trying to be, I think that's a little bit of a failure. Yeah, but they go from 2 to 4. And we'll talk about that in a second. All right, what else is core Tunnels and Trolls? Core Tunnels and Trolls is no Vancian magic. You know, rather than the fire and forget spells, we, in Tunnels and Trolls, use spell points. And in Tunnels and Trolls, the default version is strength. Now, I'm not really a fan of using strength as Tunnels and Trolls, as the source of magic. I've talked about that before. In my game, I use luck, but that is the core. In the new era, there are spell points. Only they don't call them spell; they call it mana. Okay. Actually, yeah, let's talk about that. There's a lot of things that they just call things for no apparent reason, right? We have 50 plus years of gaming history now. 52 years. Actually, 52 years and 1 month since D&D was first published, right? Things have names, right? PCs, player characters, they don't call them that. They call them heroes. Ever since 5e came out, which was a good number of years ago, right? Everyone's gotten used to advantage and disadvantage as terms. They have kind of an advantage and disadvantage mechanic, but they don't call it that. They call it blessed and cursed. There are these terms that everybody knows. Why do you feel the need to reinvent this stuff? I hate it when games do that. That's another miss, objectively. Well, subjectively, I guess. But anyway, where was I before I go? Oh, mana. In Tunnels and Trolls, mana was always called creme. Now, I guess you could defend calling it mana because every other game since then has called it mana. But in Tunnels and Trolls, it was creme, but they changed it. Maybe they didn't buy the rights to Troll World. Maybe Ken kept those and creme is part of Troll World. Maybe. Anyway, so there's mana. In Tunnels and Trolls, because your mana is your strength, you know, it ranges 3 to 18-ish. And so after you cast a spell, it might cost like 5 points or something, and then you get a point back every 10 minutes, right? Because you're doing 10-minute dungeon turns, so 1 point every turn. Very logical. In here, you have, I think it was 2 stats added together, so they're going to go from 4 to 8 spell points. I didn't look to see how many spell points a spell cast. They only have a few spells in there as examples. Yeah, And anyway, but you don't get them back every 10 minutes. It's the whole D&D 5e BS about short rests and long rests. No, if you take a short rest after combat, you get all your mana back. So that level of resource management isn't there. Just poof, you get it all back. Whatever. On the other hand, it is easier to track. I will give that. But it's not Tunnels and Trolls. All right. What else is core Tunnels and Trolls? The savings roll. So in TNT, whenever you try to do something, so we call it savings throws because the word task resolution didn't exist back then. But if you're trying any task where you would normally roll like a skill check in D&D or GURPS or something, in Tunnels and Trolls, it is a savings roll versus an attribute. In Tunnels and Trolls, you roll 2d6 and you add the attribute. You're trying to get 20 or higher. If you roll doubles, you get to roll again. And if you roll doubles, you get to roll again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, until you're out of doubles and hopefully you have what you needed. In this game, you take the number of attributes you have. I mean, your score of your attribute. Let's say we're doing an intelligence check. Let's say our intelligence is 3. And so you roll 3d6 because that's your intelligence. If you had a 2, you roll 2d6. And you count successes. In other words, it's a dice pool based on your attribute trying to reach a certain number of successes. Does this sound familiar? If you've ever played White Wolf, Vampire the Masquerade, or any of those World of Darkness games, you know, the storytelling system, this is that, except it doesn't have skills. So, you know, in their thing where they said in the beginning, you know, trying something new, nope, nothing new here. All you did was take World of Darkness and might as well just call it Dungeoneer the Delvin. And that's being a little harsh, I know, because I don't think there's a problem taking rules you like from different games and mashing them up. In fact, in the Anchorite Appa, I just did that last issue. I called it Gem. And really all Gem is Fudge and Rhesus smashed together. Because those are both great games, but the dice mechanic in Rhesus I don't like, and Fudge takes a little too much other stuff mashed together. I thought it was perfect. Anyway, Bill, what rant was I just on? Oh, the task with the resolution. Yeah, that just lifted from World of Darkness. Nothing new there, nothing to see there, and it's definitely not Tunnels and Trolls. Now, this is where life gets really complicated. Remember in Tunnels and Trolls, I said if you roll doubles, you get to roll again, they explode, is the term that we use in gaming these days. Here, if you roll doubles or triples, you can choose whether or not you want them to explode. And the book is really weird the way it is written. The way it is written, if you roll 3 in a row, you get to roll 9 dice in your explosion pool. I don't think they meant that. I think they meant if you roll 3, you get to roll 3. The problem is that in their rules, they say for each double, you get to roll 2. And then for a triple, you get to roll 3. So if you roll 3 of a kind, right? So you have die A and die B, that's 1 double. Die A and die C, that's another double. Die B and die C, that's a third double. So that's 6 dice, plus the triple is 9 dice. If that doesn't make sense to you, you've never played cribbage. Because it says for every double. And it's also very confusing because it says in one section it says for every double, and another one that says for every that's a hit. So only those that would be a success. They don't call them successes, they call them hits because, again, they feel the need to change these words that we've been using in gaming for decades to something new for no reason at all. It drives me crazy. Anyway, where else was I going to go with this? But the reason you might not want to do that is because if you get 3 ones, and not 3 ones in a row, like if you roll 3 dice and 2 of them were, say, 6s, and 1 of them was 1, and you re-roll those 6s and they come as 1s, well, that's 2 ones now, and plus the one you had before, that's 3. That's a critical failure. And that also means that the higher your stat is, the more likely you are to get a critical failure. In fact, if you have a 2 as your stat and you never do a reroll, you will never get a critical failure. They said that's intentional. I think that's just, it's a little quirk. We couldn't figure out how to fix it, so we're going to live with it. That's what I think it is. I think it's a little bit of fault, and it doesn't make sense to me. Okay. What else is fundamental TNT? Fundamental combat. Okay, combat in TNT is 2 die rolls. I roll, you roll. We compare them, subtract, done. That's it. And if I'm fighting 10 monsters, it's still 2 die rolls. Those 10 monsters only make 1 roll all combined. Mind you, it's more dice than just 1 would. Or if there's 10 PCs, counting like hirelings and stuff, and 10 monsters, it's still, you're only making those 2 rolls. In this game, each, okay, let's break it down to just 1 person, 1 monster, right? The person rolls initiative. If they win initiative, let's assume they win. They won an initiative, then they roll to attack, and the monster rolls a defense, and then the monster rolls to attack, and the player rolls a defense. That's 5 rolls for 1 round of combat, and then you repeat it. So what was 2 rolls is now 5 rolls. And of course, those rolls are subject to the explosion rules that we just talked about. Again, you're only counting successes, and the damage you take is the difference between the winner and the loser, which means when you're on the attacking side, you can still take damage. If the monster scores higher than you, you're going to take damage. Yeah. It might work. I would have to play it to see if it works. But it's not Tunnels and Trolls. No, it's not. And we've added a bunch more rolls. I mean, what do we do in D&D? In D&D, we roll initiative, attack, other side attacks. It's 3 rolls, and I think that's too many. Oh, no, because you roll attack, you roll initiative, attack, damage. So that's 5 rolls. Same number of rolls as D&D. Character classes. Tunnels and Trolls has 3 character classes. You have your fighter, your warrior, which maps to the fighter of original D&D. You have your wizard, which maps to your magic user of original D&D. And you have your rogue, which isn't a thief. It stands for rogue wizard. It is a wizard who's not a member of the Wizards Guild. And so they exist in this kind of in-between space. In other words, they're your multi-class person. They're your person that has magic, but can also fight. In other words, they're your cleric from original D&D. Because if you didn't know original D&D, clerics didn't get any spells until 2nd level, but they could wear any armor. Their fighting ability was just below a fighter, definitely better than a wizard. So it mirrored those 3. This does not have any character classes at all. Instead, it has these things called paths. And I think, like the paths in D&D, you make die rolls as you level up, and there is no, as I read through this, I was like, there is no player agency. In Tunnels and Trolls, which is funny because this is a more narrative game. In Tunnels and Trolls, you roll the dice, and then I could come up with this great backstory for this character and everything. I can't do that. That's all been taken away from me because it's all these tables that you roll on, and the decisions are made for you. And even as I flip further in the book for the GM section, there's more stuff where they take away the GM agency. And I mean, why do the game if you're going to do all the imagination for it? You're doing all the fun part, leaving all the die rolling for us. No. So I don't like this game. I don't like it as Tunnels and Trolls, and I don't like it as a standalone game if it was called something else. Although I could see where other people might like it as a standalone game if it was something else. I am more narrativist than gamist. But there are times when I get in a gamist mood, and that's what TNT is great for. I reach for that, right? This one, it doesn't scratch either itch. So objectively, is it TNT? Is it a good homage to TNT? No, that's not even an opinion. That is just fact. You look at all the core things that make TNT. This is not any of those. Well, I guess it was 1 or 2 of them, but is it a good game if it's not TNT? Maybe. It depends on what you like and your style of play and everything. For me, no. I could see some of the places where they're trying to go, but no. If you want a more modern take on TNT that still feels like TNT, I recommend Tunnel Quest. Just search for Tunnel Quest 3.5. If I think about it, I will put a link down below or in the show notes. It's available for free download legitimately. It was made as a free game. It's on 1KM1KT, which stands for 1,000 monkeys, 1,000 typewriters. But yeah, it's a great game. It has more modern mechanics, and it's definitely feels more like TNT than this does, even though it's not TNT. Anyway, and if you just want the real TNT experience, Ken St. Andre did hold on to the rights to publish the original rules, but he's doing it under another title called Monsters, which was a TNT offshoot from way back in the day anyway, published by Metagaming, but now he has all those rights, so that's what he is publishing. So if you want a true TNT experience done today, get Monsters. Otherwise, get Tunnel Quest or buy the old editions of TNT on drive-through. That's it. I'm leaving. Have a great day, and until next time, happy gaming, happy life. Bye.